Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to do a quick little book review since 2019 is coming to an end, and I really read a lot this year. One of my New Year's resolutions was to read more throughout the year, so I did do that this year, and I read some pretty good books that I just want to share. So I feel like they're not as mainstream, not something that you'd see on Instagram. A few of them are. Some of them I just kind of found on my self-discovery journey this year. This year was really all about like growth for me. I was really into self-help and books that could help me better myself. I have, how many do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's my top 5. I'm gonna just go through them in no particular order and tell you what I think about each one. I do highlight important portions of every book now because I just feel like it's easier to go back and kind of remember key points and like go back and skim a book if the parts that resonated with you the most are the parts that are highlighted. I'm gonna talk a little bit about the author of each book and then go through my favorite highlighted parts throughout. The first book I have here is Osho's The Art of Living and Dying. Osho is kind of like a very wise author. He's wrote books on a lot of other topics, love, just different deep topics. The way that he writes, it's just very calming. This year was probably the first year where I read a book that actually calmed me down. I've never felt such intense emotion just from reading words. This was one of the books that had that effect on me. You feel a sense of release. You just feel comforted through reading the words that you're reading. In The Art of Living and Dying, he kind of talks about why you shouldn't be afraid to die. Death is something that you should see as a gift. It sounds very morbid, but I promise the book is not morbid at all. Everybody that I tell about this book, they're like, oh my god, I don't want to read about that. Why are you reading about death? That's so depressing. Osho responds to these questions and many others from those who find themselves inexplicably attracted to the subject of mortality, as well as from those who are facing their imminent end from their careers. He does not simply show how our fear of death is based on a misunderstanding of its nature. He also shows how dying is a tremendous opportunity for inner growth and how death is the most sacred of mysteries. No one author or commentator comes close to examining this most significant of events with this much depth, the clarity, the compassion, and above all the humor of Osho. Osho is one of the best known and most provocative mystics of our time. The Sunday Times of London has named him one of the 1,000 makers of the 20th century. The novelist Tom Robbins has called him the most dangerous man since Jesus Christ. More than 2 decades after his death in 1990, the influence of his teachings continues to grow, reaching seekers around the world. So it really just talks about how you should really take advantage of your life and realize how lucky you are to be alive and how you kind of are dying every day. I'm gonna read a few of my favorite excerpts from the book. Life is spread out over a long time, 70 years, 100 years. Death is intense because it's not spread out. It's in a single moment. That hit me. That's literally on the first page of the book, not even in the introduction. There's some sciencey stuff in here. Also, another good quote was, it said people die at the age of 30 and are buried at the age of 70. Death happens very early. I think 30 is also not right. Death happens even earlier, somewhere near 21. Now you are no longer dangerous. Now you are no longer wise. Now you are no longer wrong. Now everything has been put right in front of you, fixed right in front of you. Now you've been adjusted to society. The separation of the body and consciousness is death. Because there is the separation, it is meaningless to call it death. It is merely a loosening, a breaking of connection. It is nothing more than changing clothes. And it talks about a lot of differing beliefs, which I like. He's not so set in one way of thinking. He addresses every question somebody could possibly have to ask him about the topic. It says, a man's desires are not fully satisfied and the body is ready to leave him, so those incomplete and unfulfilled desires will immediately seek a new birth. What happens after death? Because nothing happened before death. And one who knows life knows that death is another birth and nothing else. Death is another birth. A new door opens. Death is the other side of the same door you call birth. From one side, the door is known as death. From the other side, the door is known as birth. And while life is there, why not inquire into life itself? Why bother about death? These are just some of my favorite quotes from the book. Every night you die a little death. You call it sleep. It would be better to call it a little death. You disappear from the surface. You move into your innermost being. You are lost. You don't know who you are. You forget all about the world and the relationships and the people. You die a small death, a tiny death. But even that tiny death revives you. This book is super complex, so it's kind of something that you do have to read for yourself to be able to digest it and understand it. I've taken a lot of notes along with this book, multiple passages within it underlined because it is such a deep topic. It's not just something that can be summarized. You really do have to read his books for yourself. The next book, The Social Animal by David Brooks. If you guys didn't know, I just graduated with my bachelor's degree in communication. Something that I'm really interested in is how people work, how society works, why people behave the way they behave. I just feel like I'm a very literal person. Sometimes I don't understand why people would tell white lies or why people would phrase things a certain way. So that's something that really interests me, psychology and sociology. And this book talks a lot about why we're attracted to certain people, why we have certain habits that are formed, how you already have habits that are ingrained within you before you're even born. It talks about how French babies cry differently than American babies because they have the accent already ingrained into their head from hearing voices speak, and just really interesting things that you would have never thought could have affected you. It talks a lot about the subconscious, the conscious, your consciousness, subconscious behavior that you don't catch right away. I'm gonna go through, like I said again, read my favorite quote, and I'm gonna read the summary on the back. With unequaled insight and brio, New York Times columnist David Brooks has long explored and explained the way we live. Now Brooks turns to building blocks of human flourishing in a multi-layered way, profoundly illuminating work grounded in everyday life. This is the story of how success happened, told through the lives of one composite American couple, Harold and Erica. Drawing on a wealth of current research from numerous disciplines, Brooks takes Harold and Erica from infancy to old age, illustrating a fundamental new understanding of human nature along the way. The unconscious mind, it turns out, is not a dark, vestigial place, but a creative one, where most of the brain's work gets done. This is the realm where character is formed and where our most important life decisions are made, the natural habitat of the social animal. Brooke reveals the deeply social aspect of our minds and exposes the bias in modern culture that overemphasizes rationalism, individualism, and IQ. He demolishes conventional definitions of success and looks towards a culture based on trust and humility. Now with an updated and eye-opening postscript that encapsulates and further explores the new science of the mind. The Social Animal is a moving intellectual adventure, a story of achievement and a defense of progress. It is an essential book for our time and one that will have broad social impact and will change the way we see ourselves in the world. This cover that you're seeing is actually the updated version. There is an older version. I think this one's actually cheaper, the newer version also. It said 90% of emotional communication is nonverbal. Gestures are unconscious language that we use to express not only our feelings but to constitute them. By making a gesture, people help produce an internal state. It talks a lot about relationships. This is a nonfiction book, so it is telling a story, but there's also a lot of scientific research and evidence in here. Key to a well of life is to have trained the emotions to send the right signals and to be sensitive to their subtle call. People once believed that babies were blank slates, but the more investigators look, the more impressed they have become how much babies know at birth. The truth is, starting even before we are born, we inherit a great river of knowledge, a great flow of patterns coming from many ages and many sources. The information that comes from deep within the evolutionary past we call genetics. The information revealed thousands of years ago we call religion. The information passed along from hundreds of years ago we call culture. The information passed along from decades ago we call family. And the information offered years, months, days, or hours ago we call education and advice. But it is all information, and it flows through the dead, through us, and to the unborn. You can probably recite the alphabet from A to Z because through repetition you have built a sequence of patterns in your head. You would probably have trouble reciting the alphabet from Z to A because that sequence has not yet been reinforced by experience. In this way, each of us has unique neural networks, which are formed, reinforced, and constantly updated by the electric circumstances of our life. Once circuits are formed, that increases the chances the same circuits will fire in the future. The neural networks embody our experiences and in turn guide future action. I thought that was interesting. You know how they say, oh, you'll get better with experience? The activity of blending neural patterns is called imagination. It seems easy, but it is phenomenally complex. It consists of taking two or more things that do not exist together, blending them into the mind, and then creating an emergent third thing that never existed at all. This is called double scope integration. We can take the gist of a dog and then call it the gist of Winston Churchill we have stored in our head, and we can imagine Winston Churchill's voice coming out of the dog's mouth. It talks about attachment, social theory, and it's really interesting if you're interested in knowing more about why people behave the way they behave. The next one's The Highly Sensitive Person by Elaine Aron. I absolutely love this book. I shared on my Instagram. The Highly Sensitive Person, How to Thrive When the World Overwhelms You. I feel like I have pretty tough skin, but I just analyze like literally every single detail, and I can be sensitive sometimes more than other people because they just don't look into things as much as I do. So I was really interested in reading this because she talks about how like it's actually a plus to be highly sensitive and how it can be of an advantage to you if you do get overstimulated easily or have anxiety a lot, how you can actually use it to your advantage instead of using medication or freaking out about it or thinking that something's wrong with you. I did get some people respond. I got a lot of people responding back to me when I posted this book on my story. I guess I do want to mention that if you have a certain diagnosed illness and you really feel like you can't deal with something, then medication could be a reasonable option. There's a whole section on taking medication for anxiety and depression. I'll read the summary. Are you a highly sensitive person? Do you have a keen imagination and vivid dreams? Is time alone each day as essential to you as food and water? Are you too shy or too sensitive according to others? Do noise and confusion quickly overwhelm you? If your answers are yes, you may be a highly sensitive person. Most of us feel overstimulated every once in a while, but for a highly sensitive person, it's a way of life. In this groundbreaking book, Dr. Elaine Aron, a clinical psychologist, workshop leader, and highly sensitive person herself, shows you how to identify this trait in yourself and make the most of it in everyday situation. Drawing on her many years of research and hundreds of interviews, she shows how you can better understand yourself and your trait to create a fuller, richer life. So there are like little tests in here too, but there's not a lot. I'm gonna read some of my favorite quotes from this book. I'm just doing a lot of talking. Mostly, you notice that you seem unable to tolerate as much as other people. You forget that you belong to a group that has often demonstrated great creativity, insight, passion, and caring, highly valued by society. Because people without the trait, the majority, do not understand that they see us as timid, shy, weak, or the greatest sin of all, unsociable. Fearing these labels, we try to be like others, but that leads to our becoming over-aroused and distressed. The differences seem to lie somewhere on the way to the brain or in the brain, in a more careful processing of information. The deeper processing of subtle details causes you to consider the past or future more. It helps to know that cultures in which this trait is more valued, such as Japan, Sweden, and China, the research takes on a different tone. But it talks about how anxiety, all those sorts of things, are seen a little bit differently across the world. HSPs usually respond to change with resistance, or we try to throw ourselves into it, but we still suffer from it. I really like how she doesn't see anxiety in such a negative light. I think 2019 was a big year for mental health, and a lot of people talked about having anxiety and depression. I mean, depression's obviously a bad thing, but and how it's always seen in like a super negative light. It can sometimes just be your body telling you something. If you know how to read yourself and you know how to self-analyze and you're self-aware, it can be really helpful if you know how to manage it. So that's basically all that this book talks about, and it tells you why you should have confidence in yourself even with certain traits that are seen as bad or like you you shouldn't have that in society. So this was honestly really good. Highly recommend. Then we have The Mastery of Love. This book makes my heart all warm and fuzzy. I actually read this in the summer on my cruise. It was so nice. Like, I could see all the mountains and the water. Like, it was just so beautiful reading this on vacation. I did not highlight a lot of stuff in here, but I did fold in a lot of pages because I would literally be highlighting whole pages. So I ended up just folding the good pages. I'm gonna read the summary now. In The Mastery of Love, Don Miguel Ruiz illuminates the fear-based beliefs and assumptions that undermine love and lead to suffering and drama in our relationship. Using insightful stories to bring his message to life, Ruiz shows us how to heal our emotional wounds, recover the freedom and joy that are our birthright, and restore the spirit of playfulness that is vital to a loving relationship. Mastery of Love includes why domestication and the image of perfection lead to self-rejection, the war of control that slowly destroys most relationships, why we hunt for love in others and how to capture the love inside of us, how to finally accept and forgive ourselves and others. There he is. This year, probably the year where I had my most like intense, deepest relationship ever in my life. And there were a lot of things that like I didn't understand, and a lot of things that like it's just like some emotions you can only just feel. Like, you really have to feel it for yourself. Some things between you and another person, like, just hard to explain. But I just felt like I wasn't getting the right advice. And this book like really cleared up all the confusion that I had about certain things. I really like this book because he makes imaginary stories that really resonate, because they aren't real life stories. You kind of are reading it as a fairy tale. You get more value out of it because you really understand the main idea, because it is imaginary. You see like Cinderella or any of the Disney movies, there's an underlying theme or lesson in it. It's easier to understand because it's not real. It's exaggerated. I'm gonna read some quotes. We create an entire population in our mind, including multiple personalities for ourselves. And we master the image we're going to use in certain circumstances. We become artists of pretending and projecting our images, and we master whatever we believe we are. Your whole reality, everything that you believe, is your creation. You practice all of your life to be what you are, and you do it so well that you master what you believe you are. In the same way, we become masters of jealousy, masters of sadness, masters of self-rejection. All of our drama and suffering is by practice. Each of us creates a personal dream for our own self, but the humans before us created a big outside dream. The big dream includes all of the rules of society, its laws, its religions, its different cultures, and the ways to be. All of this information stored inside our mind is like 1,000 voices talking to us at once. What has happened is that when we were children, the adults already have the mental disease, and they are highly contagious. So that goes into more of the story where he talks about the wounded mind. We perceive everything with an emotional body. The emotional body is like a radio that can be turned to perceive certain frequencies or to react to certain frequencies. The emotional body has a component like an alarm system to let us know when something is wrong. The alarm system for that emotional body is fear. We learn to be emotional according to the emotional energy in our home. We react differently according to how we learn to defend ourselves and to adapt to different circumstances. When our parents are constantly fighting, when there's disharmony, disrespect, and lies, we learn the emotional way of being like them, even if they tell us not to be that way or not to lie. The emotional energy of our parents, of our entire family, will make us perceive the world in a similar way. The emotional energy that lives in our home is going to tune our emotional body to that frequency. But really, really, really good. If you're like wanting to understand romantic relationships a little bit more, I would read this book. Really, again, it goes back into like the psychology realm, self-help realm of why people act the way they act. The last book that I have for you guys is The Power of Intention. Literally wish I could meet this man. This is the first book I've ever read in my life where I just felt so peaceful after reading it. And I actually did a whole speech on intention in my advanced public speaking class within my last semester of college that everybody really liked. Here's a summary. The power of intention. Intention is a force in the universe, and everything and everyone is connected to this invisible force. Intention is generally viewed as a pit bull kind of determination, compelling one to succeed at all costs by never giving up on the inner picture. In this view, an attitude that combines hard work with indefatigable drive towards excellence is the way to succeed. However, intention is viewed very differently in this book. Dr. Dyer has researched intention as a force in the universe that allows the act of creation to take place. This book explores intention, not as something you do, but as energy you are a part of. We are all intended here through the invisible power of intention. This is the first book to look at intention as a field of energy you can access to begin co-creating your life. Part 1 deals with the principles of intention, offering true stories and examples showing how to make the connection. Dr. Dyer identifies the attributes of the all-creating universal mind of intention as creative, kind, loving, beautiful, expanding, endlessly abundant, and receptive, explaining the importance of emulating the source of creativity. In Part 3, Dr. Dyer offers an intention guide with specific ways to apply the co-creating principles in daily life. Part 3 is an exhilarating description of Dr. Dyer's vision of an individual connected at all times to the universal mind of intention. He actually passed away, but he does have some really good books out there. He has some meditation courses as well. This book talks about meditation in relation to intention. So I actually was assigned this book for a class in college, and I read like the first 2 chapters and I was like, okay, it's just boring, I'm not reading it anymore. Then I came back to it a few months later because it was just one of the books that I had laying around on my bookshelf that I hadn't read. I really, really enjoyed the rest of it. So if you do decide to pick this up, just get through the first few chapters and it'll start like flowing and getting really good. If you guys believe in the law of attraction, this is kind of like, in my eyes, a better way to put it. It's similar to the law of attraction, but I wouldn't even like directly relate to that at all. So it says everything in the universe has intention built into it. An apple blossom in the springtime appears to be a pretty little flower, yet it has intent built into it and will manifest in the summer as an apple. Intention doesn't err. The acorn never turns into a pumpkin or the apple blossom into an orange. Every aspect of nature without exception has intention built into it. As far as we can tell, nothing in nature questions its path of intent. Nature simply progresses in harmony from the field of intention. It talks about how intention is kind of like paradoxical to free will, and just every question you can think of that would go against intention, it talks about why intention is like superseding. So intention is free and will certainly qualify as being intention and free will certainly qualify as being paradoxical. You can fuse the dichotomy by choosing to believe in the infinity of intention and your capacity to exercise free will. It's impossible to have two infinities, for then neither would be infinite. Each would be limited by the other. You can't divide infinite into parts. Where does the air in your kitchen stop, and where does the air in your living room begin? Where does the air inside your home stop and the outside air start? It's all in the understanding of the infinite universal and omnipresent spirit. Your free will can either move you with the universal spirit and its unfolding, or away from it and toward ego and dominance. As it moves away from the spirit, life appears to be a struggle. Solar energies flow through you and you may feel hopeless, helpless, and lost. You can use your free will to join higher, faster frequencies. And it's just really, really good. This is another complex book that you really have to read for yourself. But if you're interested in the law of attraction, I would go look up a summary right now because this book just like was so good. Those were my top 5 books of 2019. If you have read any of these books, let me know in the comments down below. If you're interested in reading any of the books, let me know down below as well. I'm gonna leave all of the Amazon links to each book in the description of this video, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your week.